Namaste, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for being here again. If you're hearing my voice today, this means that I have not only survived, but on my way back to thriving after a brief hosting of COVID. So this gives hope. I hope it gives hope to you. It certainly does to me. Anyhow, we're going now with Principle 2 from our book, Aware in a World of Sleep, a principled way for living spiritually. Here's the second principle. Being and staying in your spiritual awareness determines what is real. And then a quote. Tao is the Tao that is not spoken. Listen to it, but you cannot hear it. Its name is soundless. That's from Lao Tse. Let me say it again. Tao is the Tao that is not spoken. Listen to it, but you cannot hear it. Its name is soundless. The second principle comes out of what we have forgotten about life and about ourselves as life, and how I arrived at my favorite spiritual story. I'll explain that this way. Spiritual awareness as prophesying. I love to shop, not for the shopping itself, but for what usually happens at the checkout counters. Sounds strange? Yeah, probably, but and I've been called strange, but so what? That doesn't matter. Perhaps this explanation will clear it up. When checking out at a grocery store, the attendant will usually ask, "How are you?" Inwardly, I smile immediately at the prospect. My response is a quick, "I'm just perfect." And then I pause to see their response. If none, I will then add, "Just like you are." That usually gets their attention. Either they get the point immediately or they go into complete denial of their perfection. If they respond with denial, like, "Oh, no, not me, I'm far from perfect," I then rejoin with, "Oh, have you forgotten?" A pause. Do you know what happens when you forget you're perfect? They look at me puzzled. Well, when you forget you're perfect, you behave as though you're not. That phrase is the awakener, the one that almost all get. It puts them into an immediate remembrance of their divinity. Will they stay there? I have no idea. And the overwhelmingly large proportion of cases that seems to be so, nothing more need to be said to them, though. The point has been made, and the seed has been planted. Try this for yourself when you shop. It sounds weird, and you're gonna say, "Oh, they're gonna think I'm weird." So what? Do it. You'd be amazed at how much you will help people and how much you will help yourself with this understanding. Not only will it stun many back from their spiritual reality into the spiritual reality, but it will also boast the truth within you. This one act will help you to remember that you too always have been, are, and always will be just perfect. Did Jesus not admonish us this way? Be ye perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect. Did he not also tell us that God, in his description, divine consciousness, is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow? You know now why this also is true for you. You always have been, are, and always will be just perfect, just as your internal wisdom is perfect, precisely because you are one in being, one and the same divine essence. Very few of these delightful servants asked what it was they forgot. To that I have said something about the divine perfection they witnessed as they entered into this plane. The conversation goes on, something like this. You and I were created as perfect spiritual beings, and nothing can change that perfect essence. That is all there really is, and that is eternally the truth of being. The only reason you do not think we're perfect is because you have taken others' ideas of us as a truth, when they represent only their thoughts, their beliefs, their opinions. We have also taken on quite predominantly the collective view or mass consciousness about life. Quite simply, this is placing faith in others' views rather than in our inward truth. In spiritual terms, faith thus placed is a losing proposition. It is a lie seeming to be true, and we practice it as though it is. To continue, I would tell them that none of that changes what we are. No matter what happens to us on this plane, we remain spiritual beings, divine essence, wisdom, spiritual consciousness individualized, and thus perfect. We are perfect whether we want to admit it or not, whether we want to like it or not, because we are nothing but what we really are. Thoroughly, completely, perfectly, and only divine consciousness individualized, contrary to outer appearance. Just as an apple is that, and a tree is that, you and I are that. Undoing false reality. The perfection found in wisdom lacks only our awareness and acceptance in order for it to be activated. I will say this again, just for reinforcement. All our perfection lacks is our awareness and acceptance. It is the combination of awareness and acceptance that activates wisdom perfection into being on all planes of existence. Speaking of planes of existence, in the Gospel of John, Jesus told us that God is spiritual, and thus we must look at God and life spiritually. That is, as inspirational idea, an idea parented out of the womb of wisdom. Life has shown me that we become spiritually aware, enlightened, through eyes of intuition, insight, and metaphor, and not through the physical senses, and certainly not through a literal look at life. Inspirational ideas come to us by abiding conscious awareness, not from a belief in duality or ego consciousness. When we become aware of this deeper consciousness, we also come to see that it is this very same consciousness that leads the way to spiritual transformation, if indeed not transcendence itself. Thus we come to see the face of wisdom's meaning for us. This way of seeing deals with truth and how wisdom can and will play out once held in the faith of what we used to call God. This is what it means for truth to manifest only in its image, as the natural outcome of wisdom in some material form. This inevitable outcome, though, through what is called the law of order, also casts away the dualistic concept of opposites, like health and illness, for example. The manifestation of wisdom's inspiration just is what it is and needs no other qualifiers for it to be what it is, nor any choice to be one or the other. Once again, first cause, as defined by Aristotle, refers to the one and only real cause of all spiritual demonstration. And we find in Webster's New Universal, boy, I was about to combine that one, unabridged dictionary, this is what Aristotle meant by metaphysics. Not that metaphysics lacks the material, but rather that spiritual demonstration has order and is conscious awareness of inspiration that activates its image and likeness into the individualized form. The outcome is inseparable from its source, a spiritual idea in its foundation. Whatever other viewpoint we take about spiritual demonstration is an illusion made up by man in ego's image as a way of fulfilling ego's desire for us to be separate from God, the still, small voice of wisdom. This desire to be separate is duality defined and the height of vanity. The ego is very clever in this regard, knowing that the same law or dynamic works for ego consciousness as it does for divine consciousness. There was one major difference, however. Ego consciousness cannot manifest anything spiritual, cannot demonstrate wisdom. It can muster only some clever idea formed out of self-important desire. On the other hand, divine consciousness manifests only the highest good, the only good, I should say, for all concerned. Perhaps a simple example will illustrate Aristotle's view. We look at a table fashioned out of wood and we call it simply a table. We might embellish that some by calling it a beautiful table, but usually we just casually refer to it as a table. The label takes on our view of outer appearance, the table, rather than focusing on the wisdom from which inspiration flows into material reality. Well, you might say, if this is the case, then let us back up a bit and say that this table in front of us is really a tree, fashioned or formed into a new form, a beautiful table. You will certainly be on the right track with such a declaration. And I suspect a good woodworker would agree with you, but a master woodworker would know there is so much more to and in a table than a limited perception would permit. The master craftsman, by the connection he makes with the wood and the tree, is able to spiritually discern its fiber to be the essence of life itself that made the tree possible in the first place. His connection with the divine essence is that profound and that deep. This is what makes him a master and what gives his demonstrations soul. If we trace the table back to its source properly, then we still come to see that the table is God, divine essence or inspiration manifested in significantly individualized expressions of awareness along the way. The first and only cause is what has been parented, brought to life, in this case through two iterations of inspiration demonstrated into material form, ending up, finally, you guessed it, as a table. This is the good thing to remember about all of life, for real life reflects the same heritage and none other. Let us remember this too about first cause. It is not the roles we play, but only truth in which we walk that determines our identity. As we practice staying in awareness of our divine essence, it has us expressing our divinity at every level. We act from it, and thus we are actually being it. So forget not, remember always, practice, practice, and practice some more. Practice staying aware of inspiration's voice. Actually, it is this awareness that declares spiritual intimacy. Intimacy is not some feeling we have about our relationship with another. It is not about sharing our deepest secrets with another. Nor is it the height of physical intimacy shared in passionate sexual activity. Authentic intimacy begins with an awareness of our divinity. Once this is accepted, it filters through it to every level of life. Intimacy is then felt in all aspects of personal engagement. We come to feel intimate even with plants and animals, just as we do in our relationships with all who come into our path. The key, however, is becoming intimate first with our awareness of what we truly are, being intimate with the inner voice we hear and expressing it thus. It is the only real cause of anything that follows on a relational level. I am reminded of the marvelous introduction to the movie Crash, where in the opening scene, one of the main characters says something like this: "We are so hardened and numb that we keep crashing into one another just so we can feel something on some level at all. We keep forgetting that we are not separate, but one. Distractions that stem from a belief in ego and mass consciousness are frequent and often disabling. This is a powerful warning to which we may well pay good attention. Distraction is yet another means of keeping us behind the veil that separates us from our truth. Communing with truth defines spiritual intimacy, which renders life authentic for us. The pathway to spiritual meaning. We find truth, the deeper meaning lodged in wisdom, neither in books nor in voices. By looking within, we are able to see beyond the messenger to the message, to the voice of inner authority. To reinforce this point, it is neither our intellect nor our senses, like eyes, ears, and brain, from which we get spiritual truth. These are really only metaphors for the spiritual senses, which are intuition, insight, meaning, comprehension, enlightenment, transformation, transcendence, and resurrection. In a very real way, our inner senses serve us more deeply than we normally think of them doing, not physically, but metaphorically. For example, when we say, "Oh, now I see what you mean," as a metaphor, we do not mean that we saw something with our physical eyes. Instead, we came to deeper comprehension of what was being said, from whence spiritual meaning emanates. We also say, "Oh, now I hear you," meaning essentially the same as seeing it. We have gained a new perspective on some issue, concern, or idea. Likewise, we taste the bitterness of an argument or in defeat, and we are touched by a sensitive note from a dear friend. These examples speak to spiritual truth and not physicality at all. In this sense, it's the only real spiritual meaning found. Our physical senses cannot, in and of themselves, do anything like hear, see, or taste on a spiritual level. But physical senses can serve as metaphors to help us experience a deeper sense of self. Coming to know the truth in this fashion makes us free, gives us permission, if you will, to live it. Otherwise, we succumb to beliefs about ourselves, others, and life in general that really are untruths, errors, or illusions, and we are imprisoned by them. The familiar admonition to know thyself speaks to this very point. Knowing thyself validates the scriptural reference that we come to know as we are known. Now, however, we have come to comprehend the fullest meaning, that we know as we are known, both with G's, know, known, and know, from the power exhibited only from the truth we find and live from within. When we know thyself with a capital S, that is, when we are in touch with our truth, then we, without question or doubt, demonstrate that exact image and likeness. It will not necessarily be the same form, but it will be clearly identifiable as its first and only cause. Nonetheless, if, for example, I see myself as whole and complete, I will not seek elsewhere for someone to complete me or make me whole. In the final analysis, it is not the truth that makes us free, it is the knowing of the truth that makes us free. G-N-O-W-I-N-G. It is the knowing of the truth that makes us free, both to be the truth as well as demonstrating it faithfully. It is experiencing the truth as truth that does the setting free, free from all the old habits of belief and opinion that simply cannot work in the spiritual world. Such illusions are nothing but duality portrayed. This setting free leads us to a clear and meaningful spiritual definition of forgiveness. Forgiveness is about giving up all those insidious beliefs, opinions, and roles that in the physical world we have taken to be the truth for us, and instead moving on to the only real truth. This elevates the cheap, superficial form of forgiveness to the single act that frees one and all from the ill effects of guilt and shame that come from taking others' acts and expressions personally. Shifting our perspective on life from the unreal to truth is what forgiveness is about. At the least, for we hold ourselves responsible for forgiving others. Coming to the spiritual perspective is forgiveness personified. I like to wear what has become my favorite t-shirt, the one that says on the front, "Love out loud." The spiritual truth is that we do not need words or songs to come out of our mouths to express love out loud. Not at all. Loving out loud is more about how we express what we really are, not about words. It's about being true to the voice of wisdom and only that. Thomas Keating, a Trappist contemplative monk, tells us that silence is the language God speaks, and all else is nothing but a mistranslation. Indeed, it is out of silence that loving out loud is made manifest. Words themselves can only point to truth, but truth itself emanates only from wisdom heard in silence. Silence heard between the words when we listen carefully. Silence heard between the lines when we read from a focus on inner meaning. The silence we hear in the wind's whisper, "I love you," as it busses our cheek on a warm summer eve at sunset. The silence we feel by quieting our own beliefs and opinion in favor of the truth our hearts speak. In each example of silence, we hear inspiration speaking to us as wisdom. As we get ourselves there to the vacuum created out of silencing our beliefs and opinions, nestled to some form of fear, we can rest assured that when there, inspiration will do her job faithfully and righteously. When we silence all forms of ego consciousness, it is there where we hear the immortal, all-powerful voice speak, "Be still and know I am God," and "I am that I am," meaning divine consciousness, wisdom, the truth of our being is what I am. I am that. Yes, the voice we hear within is that which loves out loud. It is the beginning and the end, all is one. All else is a mistranslation we take to be the truth. Spiritual meaning is not about opinion and form from the ego-conscious elements of intellect and linear rationality, but is discerned through an inner experience of authentic knowing, G-N-O-W-I-N-G. Sorry, I lost my place there for a moment. My computer was fiddling with me. Spiritual meaning is not about opinion formed from an ego-consciousness elements of intellect or linear rationality, but is discerned through an inner experience of authentic knowing. Intuition is truth understood, wisdom heard. Indeed, intuitive impressions are received through the silence that speaks only truth to us. Thus, intuition and spiritual meaning are inseparable. One is a reflection of the other, and metaphor informs the process. The spiritual context for belief and opinion. Speaking about opinion, there's a story about a group having a business meeting in order to arrive at some strategic decisions. As the discussion progressed, everyone but Mary were giving their opinions. They were scattered all over the topic, and some good and others lukewarm. Finally, someone noticed that Mary had not yet contributed to the discussion at all and said, "Mary, what's your opinion about this? You've been quiet today." "Oh," Mary responded reflectively, "I was just being silent so I could hear the truth of the matter." Point well made. Learning to reconnect with life on this level is a gift to be treasured and to be used for the utmost good of all concerned. Beliefs we hold sacred are but collective consciousness and ego consciousness operating to hold us in place, the place of limitation instead of boundless capacity or limitless realm of possibility. Holding on to a particular belief helps manifest in material form the content and intention of that belief. The only difficulty is that such manifestations come out of illusory configuration of reality. If one holds on to material as a reality, then this is precisely the type of belief that perpetuates the ego consciousness belief in life and death. Why do we ask so little out of life, unless we believe that life were this limited, this small itself? Dare we see life, thus ourselves, as bigger than the limitations we often put on both? Dare we see that life, real life, is all formed only out of spiritual consciousness? Life is about seeing from the macro plane, not the microplane. The latter can be somewhat helpful, but it is also limiting, just like beliefs are. Besides, opposition can always be found to one belief or another. Duality is thus perpetuated through belief and opinion. Only the experience of knowing our inner resonance with the truth is the answer. When truth shows its face, it eliminates duality in a single stroke of genius. Do not confuse belief or opinion with the truth if you really want only the truth. Mary Baker Eddy said this about Jesus. His teachings set households at variance and brought to material beliefs not peace but a sword. What a vibrant testimony to the process of cutting away the conviction of material belief. Let this be an admonition we never forget. We must view life as a perpetual opportunity to cut away erroneous belief and in its place install only what we come to know as truth by experiencing truth inwardly. It is the difference between night and day, between ignorance and the truth found in spiritual enlightenment. Spiritually, we cannot make this physical existence a better place because it isn't the real place. It is only the result of a delusional thought system, mass consciousness infused and expressed. It took mass consciousness for Hitler to overturn Europe and crucify the Jews. It has taken the mass consciousness of fear to initiate, perpetuate the war in Iraq and elsewhere. It takes mass consciousness to maintain the extraordinary level of poverty and environmental destruction we have on this planet. Likewise, it has taken the belief in mass consciousness to establish and maintain our focus on duality over spiritual reality. If we are aware, we need not count the ways. They are all too evident in the midst of us. A needless striving for peace. Sounds strange, I know. As we bring these disrupting factors into view, we can see that they distract us from experiencing the inherent peace that is found in the conscious awareness of wisdom. We cannot find real, lasting peace somewhere out there through barter and advocacy. We can only bring ourselves into the conscious awareness of peace we already are and demonstrate that. As each of us becomes aware of the peace we are, innately so, instead of the disease we feel much of the time, that deep, penetrating feeling of ease energizes every cell of our bodies, and we are renewed throughout. Acknowledging what we are brings ultimate reality to the fore, and the feeling of serenity along with it. The feeling of serenity reveals the shift in life's purpose gained from the true meaning of our essence, now remembered. Healing is about turning over a new leaf, exercising a new way of viewing life, one that relieves the stress caused by living a lie encapsulated in error. It is not a physical happening at all. Rather than the healing that has taken place, it is an awareness of our highest good reappearing to us. Therefore, as we begin to live again from divine consciousness, the stress also leaves our earthly consciousness. When this happens, our physical bodies begin to act on the new messages they eavesdrop on all we know and express. All the rest that is good is bound to follow, is given unto us. Remember, what we are being in our hearts is what we really want out in the world beyond. That is the image to faithfully abide, loving what we are with all we are, through our constant awareness of this truth, is what restores us to peace. Peace thus becomes a part of all the rest that is added unto us. That is the promise we find in Jesus' teachings. Inner peace felt in the only moment there is, the eternal now. When we view the process of spiritual fulfillment, we come to see we are moved away from a very immature belief and a kind of peace for which we barter endlessly. We move to a more expansive perspective in which we be the peace we want to see, rather than engaging the victimized perspective where others and particular situations seem to rob us of peace. How could anybody rob us of what we really are, after all? As we continue into the expansiveness of divine consciousness, we soon become aware that we have at last found our home. That home is you, that home is me, and all like us, and with all the attributes and characteristics of that entity we have called our truth. Now we know we are the consciousness which demonstrates peace, love, patience, compassion, and happiness or joy. Thus we come to feel at home, and peace prevails without any effort from us at all. Being happiness. Because of the mass consciousness that feels this material life, many of us take on the belief that material means can meet spiritual need, like happiness, for example. This can never be the truth. The material can never fulfill the spiritual need, can really never make us happy. Besides, happiness, like peace, is an inherent characteristic of a spiritual life, not found in the material. For example, having more personal wealth can never make us happy or bring us peace of mind, nor can it really make us feel secure and prosperous or free from bondage. More personal wealth can make us feel temporarily giddy and material satisfied. It can falsely make us think we're secure and prosperous one moment, and in the next we fear that what wealth we have will not be really enough, or won't last, or could be taken away from us. In this scenario, we do not have peace of mind either, nor are we free from the tethers of other fear-related thoughts. However, when we comprehend that our natural state is being happy, this also brings with it peace of mind and a joy-filled heart. When we are secure in our divinity, we come to know ourselves as happiness righteously expressed. The kingdom is ours to have and hold, and therefore to manifest. The spiritual can always meet the needs of the material. It is only in the security of our truth that we come to fulfillment in all other ways. The list of the ways in which we are fulfilled is endless, as is the promise of the kingdom. The kingdom of inspiration, the infinitude of our wisdom, is infinite and immortal in its promise for us. Fear not. Knock at the door of your real freedom and prosperity. Your truth awaits you. Your truth is you, and the one and only you. Okay, I think we can continue this. You are the gift. Each of us has had at least a glimpse of divine revelation or consciousness that has awakened us to some amazing possibility for us, some new, even deeper meaning for us. Yet for the most part, largely because of earthly presence or the impact of those naysayers in our lives, we let that glimpse fall from view and from memory. Here's the good news. Because we are divine, spiritual consciousness is always with us. All it takes is some simple realization or recollection, awareness, if you will, that it is present, and we can begin again with what we have found there, as if it has never left it behind. As though no time has passed since we first heard Truth's calling. Actually, no real time has passed, since time is an ego configuration, not a spiritual one. Real life is expressed in each ever-present moment, so it's always time to begin new with the basis of our individualized truth for us. After all is said and done, yesterday is history. Tomorrow is mystery. Today is the only gift. That's why it's called the present. Why not live the present in celebration of this truth? Indeed, there is no time like the present. There is only the present, the gift we can celebrate moment by moment. Now is a never-ending eternity. All of us can recall times when we lost ourselves in some creative act that ended with the innocent query, goodness, where did the time go? It is our investment in the now that establishes eternity as the only reality. What a marvelous gift this is, freeing us from the boundary of linear time and all that stress that comes with it. Living each eternal moment of now is a celebration of the gift it is, the present simply being what is intended to be, eternally so. A friend tells about a participant in a seminar he was attending, having removed the hands from her watch and replacing the crystal with the one that had embossed on it the word now. When someone asked her what time it was, she would look at her watch and respond with a knowing smile, "It's just now." What I'm talking about here is a promise of spiritual life. Whatever inspiration brings to us is to be expressed, and only now. It is said in Scripture, "Whatever you do to the least of my brothers, you do unto me." Symbolically, this admission has nothing to do with our relations with others. Metaphorically, this scriptural reference means that each divine idea, each gift of inspiration or wisdom, no matter how large or small, each ism, no matter how large or small each image might seem, is of equal importance, simply because each is divine. Neither size nor the appearance of relative importance should carry any weight with us at all. Each divine idea, each child born out of the womb of wisdom, awaits only our acknowledgement of it and our unfailed surrender and commitment to it in each moment of now we have. To love what we are with all our heart, soul, and strength commits to it the faith of what we have called God. Aristotle brilliantly conceived the absolute and only cause and determined it to be inseparable from like effect. Life begets like. Therefore, we can never say it is too late, or that one divine idea or another is too small or seemingly unimportant. Nor can what is given to us ever fail when we commit all we are to it. It is too late and can fail only if we fail in understanding this truth about spiritual life. Fail not. Remember with your truth always, and the rest is given unto you. When we become aware of our divine essence, we come to see only oneness. And in that oneness, our spiritual eyes are open to see that there is neither illness nor health, neither gay nor straight, skin that is neither black nor white, red or yellow. In the world of spirit, none of these exist, for there is no need for such distinctions when all of us are the one real I. Therefore, we have no need for labels to make us real or to acknowledge that truth. Life just is. No labels attached. On Angels and Miracles, It is as we live the truth of divine consciousness that we see miracle after miracle appearing before our inner vision. In the framework of ego consciousness, we get only an occasional glimpse of miracles in the outer world, and it usually takes a fairly large one to get our attention. However, when we are viewing life like an angel high on a cliffside perch, we're able to see more of life and from a very different perspective. When viewing life from a high degree of awareness, spirituality regularly informs us with the gifts of the kingdom, and life abounds with miraculous imagery. Indeed, lives are filled with new intuitional and insightful gifts. I would not say that miracles become commonplace, because that could be understood to mean that may one day take them for granted. Instead, the meaning of commonplace I would like to convey is that the beauty and form of spiritual miracles can be everywhere found as we go through our days and nights. When we see through our newfound spiritual eyes, life in all its forms is miraculous to us. We no longer identify life as mundane. Rather, we come to celebrate the divine miraculous nature of which the mundane is composed. What could be better and more the truth? How simply miraculous. This is somewhat like being able to see and be informed by angels. From a metaphysical point of view, angels are simply messages of truth released from within. Resonating is the sure path for us. From time to time, we hear someone say something that moves us to truth, or saves us from some kind of impending disaster. An angelic message can come to us as a book that seemingly jumps off the shelf into our hands. When opened at random, it has just the answer we needed right then. I've heard it said that angels and miracles and even coincidental happenings are God's way of remaining anonymous. What is really happening is we are put in touch with the calling of soul, our own highest good, our own wisdom or truth, so we can surrender to that voice rather than some erroneous calling from outside us. This is a nice way of saying we have thus avoided the perils of duality. In this way, we are touched by the voice of an angel with only our best interests at heart. As we become more and more adept at listening to the voice of Spirit, we hear these angelic messages more regularly. As we surrender to the messages we hear, they become more prominent in our presence. From this presence, we are born again to conscious awareness of inner truth, and we live that faithfully. We also hear angels speak when we listen carefully to the spaces between the words of a conversation with another. When we see the truth spoken between the lines of elegant prose or idyllic poetic expressions. When we celebrate the sparkle of early morning dew on a blade of grass, or simply when inspired by a suggestion that occurs to us out of the blue. Indeed, these could well be slightly different renditions of what angels are, but when living in the world of divine consciousness, things just look and sound very different from what we're used to seeing and hearing. Pardon me, I'll take a little sip of water here to that soothes, that's still a little bit of soreness in the back of my throat. When we are able to view life from such a perspective, not only will your life be filled with angels all around you, but you also come to see that you too are angelic. Others will surely see you this way, perhaps already do, even though they might not call you by that name. They may just say that they find you immensely helpful or inspirational, or that you lift their spirits. Either way, or any way, your behavior fits the description of one. At first you might feel overcome with such a spiritual idea, but the truth never hurts. It only informs us what it is. So get used to it already. That's when the miracles really show up. Ego's indifference to awareness. When using spiritual vision, we welcome awareness of our inner perspective. As Shakespeare said, let every eye negotiate for itself and trust no agent. Simply brilliant in its spiritual conveyance. Do we go to our inner authority or some outer one for information, approval, and validation? We can ask someone else what is good or right for us, but that answer will not necessarily be the one that fits us. Only we can really know the truth of our being. Where then do we find authenticity, our real meaning, our real purpose? I'm sure you recall the story about Jesus in the synagogue, how he turned the tables on the money changers and threw them out of the temple. In a spiritual context, this is a story that asks, what is the legitimate currency of life spiritually or essentially or materialism, inner or outer authority? Which is the actual reality? Is it found in truth or in duality, in wisdom or in the illusions of the material world? What is the real currency is the question. Just know that when you make a choice, you must reject anything and everything that is not that choice, or it will nag you endlessly with feelings of doubt, fear's uncomely cousin. When riding in the power of wisdom, surrendering to the inherent truth we feel there replaces the notion of choice. Such surrender is necessary if we are to establish our life's real direction with integrity. Found in that surrender is the only real currency, that which will not only serve our highest good, but also the highest and best for the universe. Jesus stood strong for the single way of spirituality instead of the false choices that occupy duality. He loved and stood for divine consciousness with all he was. How can we do less? Give to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's, Jesus said to us. Given the current context, it might well be said this way. Give to Caesar what is material. Give to the material world your spiritual awareness. For those whose consciousness is grounded in the material world, materiality is the vehicle of existence and filled with choices galore. Contrarily, when we come to know there really is nothing but spiritual consciousness, we simply and faithfully express the one and only real life is, the only gift real life is. The master metaphysician also told us, greater is he that is in you than he that is in this world. Metaphorically, Jesus was saying, greater is the divine consciousness you have within than the materialistic renderings found in the world of ego consciousness. What did Jesus mean when he told us, I am the way, the truth, and life? Did he mean his own personal I? That Jesus personally is the way, the truth, and life? No, hardly. The real spiritual meaning of the I of which Jesus spoke is the one and only I we each are, the way of divine awareness. Truly adhering to the whispers of wisdom is the way, the truth, and life, the one in and as all. Christ is that awareness and activity of divine consciousness that speaks regularly through us as the word of wisdom. Therefore, we need not wait for the illusory return of Jesus at some future date before we are saved. Wisdom saves us from our puny view of self each moment we are aware of his presence. Thus, we are the outward expression of the inward truth of wisdom, also called the Christ. Jim Chazen, a poet and shaman friend who writes under the moniker The Silent Lotus, says this about the voice we hear within. May your voice be loving enough to silence your own fear. I'll read that again. May your voice be loving enough to silence your own fear. In this case, the fear speaks to the unbelief in the omnipresence of wisdom. Such unbelief places us in a world of separation from our real identity and the fear that we will one day be all alone, or worse yet, that we will leave the physical body behind. We will cease to exist at all. The real voice of spiritual awareness, however, does indeed silence the fear elevated by belief in duality. When we finally come to our resting place, our real home as it were, we will fully understand that our at-one-ment is eternal, immortal, and infinite, and thus omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent, and ever active. We are home at last, and forever so, and being and staying in home of our special awareness determines what is really real, or should I say authentically real. Well, that is it for Principle 2 for today, ladies and gentlemen. I hope that you will find yourself in good health and good spirits, and knowing that you're not only loved and lovable, but are love itself. this next week. I hope that goes deeper and deeper in your awareness. As you know, I like to close with a brief post that I have seen elsewhere during the week. I'm going to leave this one for you. It's very short, but it's very important. Very important. Love begins the moment you decide to be yourself. And I could add parenthetically, rather than what somebody else thinks you are. Love begins the moment you decide to be yourself. And so until next week, my dear friends, namaste. I love you.